Hello and welcome back to the wild, which is the stunning Welsh coastline where I am right now. And today's review is all about the Fujifilm GF 500mm f/5.6, this lovely prime telephoto lens right here that Fujifilm released back in May at the Sydney Summit. And I've got it in my hand because they kindly let me borrow it 2 weeks ago, kind of, for 2 weeks when I was in Slovenia. And then there was a bit of a gap and I borrowed it for 2 weeks again around the UK. So I've been testing this in so many different scenarios, provide you with this user experience review right now. But fun fact, I have to return this lens tomorrow and today was my last trip. So the rest of this review will be retrospectively done because I'm just not gonna have enough time to check all my stuff, get my thoughts together and talk about it. So it will be retrospectively done, but there's a lot coming. So stay tuned and let's get talking about this review. Yes. Okay folks, as promised, I'm back. I'm in England in the Lake District and yeah, it's nice to be back here, although it's getting a bit cloudy behind me, so we'll see what happens if it lasts, the sunshine, but hopefully we can make it through this review. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to start talking about is the build of the Fujifilm GF 500mm f/5.6, which is wonderful. And I have to say it was a pleasure to use. And unlike the other GF lenses that I've borrowed, which has been the 55mm and the 32-64, the 500 is very lightweight, and I was surprised at how light it is for a 500mm. And the weight is 1,375 grams. Let me check. I was correct. 1,375 grams, and actually it felt well balanced and proportioned and didn't feel too heavy, especially attached to the Fujifilm GFX100s, which I've been using the whole time with this lens. The 500mm felt well balanced attached to the camera body and just as a whole. So yes, I'm happy with that. Just some of the features about the lens: it is weather sealed, it's made in Japan, it has a thread for a filter, which is great, but I haven't actually tried it with a filter yet because Fuji didn't provide one, as I borrowed this lens from Fujifilm. They haven't made one yet, so I haven't got a filter for it. So all these shots are without a filter, just bear that in mind. And it also has a lens hood attached as well, and even with the lens hood attached, it still didn't seem too big or too cumbersome. It seems well balanced and well thought out. What I love about the lens is, one, that you have the little foot mount as I just mentioned, but you can remove this, similar to the X series 150 to 600mm. I think that's great. You have the option to take it on and off if you want. You have that little screw system where you can rotate the lens to horizontal or portrait. Love that feature, always have, it's fantastic. You have little buttons at the top of the lens as well where you can adjust, have any manual settings, and then you also have your other switches like your distancing, your autofocus and your aperture, I believe. I can't remember what they all are, but they have little buttons anyway there at your disposal. So yeah, overall for the build, I thought it was great. For the time that I used it, it didn't receive any marks, any dents, any scratches. I don't know with the texture of the lens itself after a while and being black, it might scuff, I don't know. It didn't happen when I was using it, but again, if you're using it for heavy use and in rough environments, maybe it might scuff a bit, I don't know, I didn't have that. And I think that was it really. So overall for build, yeah, it wasn't too bad. Lightweight, sturdy, strong, robust, and well balanced. Let's move on. Okay, so the next point we're going to talk about is that image quality of the GF 500mm, because we all want to know how it performed, and it was stunning. So good, and I have to give you all the examples I've got. But what I loved is that this lens isn't just good in one realm. I tested it with so many different areas and situations like landscape, beautiful sunsets, horses in a field that were really far away in the fog. And I have to start with these pictures of the horses in the field with the image quality, because this was a foggy evening, low light. They were far away, maybe like 300 meters or more away. And even still being so far away, the lens picked up like the details of the whiskers of the horse, its hair, everything, and I was so impressed. And it's so nice that when you get that back into Lightroom and you see that kind of high resolution image, because they're like 200 megabyte files each, which is a lot to work with, I'll be honest. It's been a little bit slow on my Lightroom, but they are beautiful. And sometimes I found it hard when I was looking for the LCD screen on the GFX100. You can't tell that high resolution because it doesn't match the LCD screen. That's JPEG format. and I'm shooting in RAW. And yeah, I drew it in. I was just like mind blown with like how wonderful they are in low light. You can draw so much through, the sharpness is there, and this saved my life, this lens, when I was doing bear photography in Slovenia. I was in a dark lit forest, there was canopy of trees, there was a moody sky because it was raining, but even with all of that and the ISO higher, it performed amazingly. I've actually printed some images out because they've come out so well. They are so sharp, so clear. And I just always wonder now what that lens would have been like if that had been a sunny day, because it performed amazing on a dark day. So I think it's just got so much oomph behind it. It's such a powerful, powerful lens and combination with the GFX100s too. And that is something to bear in mind, that all of this was tested on the new camera body, the GFX100s, which was released back in May this year. It is a new camera body. It has got like 100 and something megapixel sensor. It's a oomph of a camera body. It's stunning. But with this lens attached to it, I was just impressed. Like, so impressed. It did so good, so good. And I've got all these examples to show you. And as I've said, this wasn't just for wildlife. It's so versatile, and if you want to use it in loads of different scenarios, you can. I was getting close-ups of bumblebees, of butterflies, of gulls, of my dog, so many different things. And in all these situations, it was so sharp, so clear, so crisp, just detailed, refinement, perfect, close and far away. It was just beautiful. I didn't notice any technicality like issues like chromatic aberrations, no vignetting or softness around the edges. It was sharp throughout, and with that f/5.6 to the higher range as well. It did really well. One thing I really do wish is that I had this lens for longer so I could test it with things like small birds and just smaller subjects. I mean, I know it did well with the bumblebee, don't get me wrong, but it'd be nice to test it out with little birds and just get details of their feathers and stuff like that. But maybe in the future I can test it more. But for what I did, it was amazing. And I got a beautiful sunset in Slovenia, and I was getting pictures of the landscape, of trees in the distance, of fog and the mist coming through the trees with the light shining through from the sunset. Oh, it was just so good. It was so good. So yeah, image quality for this lens was amazing, and I'll show you, you'll see what I mean. But I hope you enjoy it. Thumbs up for image quality. Okay, so the next point we're going to talk about is that aperture, that f/5.6 on the 500mm. And if you know my other photography and my other style of work, you will know that I love a wide aperture. I also love telephotos with a wide aperture, prime telephotos that is, with a wide aperture, because I clearly have expensive taste, and I was really excited to get my hands on the 500mm for this reason, is that it's a prime telephoto lens with a nice aperture, and it did not disappoint. With the 500mm, you can still get that beautiful, dreamy, ethereal vibe. You can still get beautiful bokeh, which I love. That is my favorite thing, bokeh, and you can still achieve that with the 500mm, which was wonderful. The actual differentiation between your depth of field to your foreground to your background is stunning. I found this particularly beautiful when I was shooting the bears in the forest, but also the horses in the field. There's just something so magical about that whole depth of field and that range you get. It's wonderful. It's almost like every step has like more, I don't know, it's like a drawn out feeling, but in a really good way. It's really nice. The aperture itself is sharp at f/5.6, as well as the higher range. I mean, I didn't get to use them as much as I wanted to because I was compensating for other things. Like I said, in the forest with the bears, I had to have obviously the widest aperture I could go, the lowest shutter speed I can go, and then my ISO was kind of the variable in that situation. So just bear that in mind. But regardless of that, it's done super well with all the different apertures I got to use it with. But going back a step about the comparison of different lenses, I'm going to mention the price in this point. So the price of the 500mm is currently sat at £3,500, rounding it up. And the price of the XF 200mm is £4,400, rounding it up. And I found that really interesting that this lens, the GF lens, it was a lot less than the XF lens. I don't know why, I just found it really interesting, and it was a pleasant surprise at the price point of £3,500. I'm not denying that's still expensive, because it is, it's a lot of money, but I was surprised at actually how reasonable it was compared to the market and also the 200mm. So overall, I'm really happy with the finish, with the aperture at that 5.6 and the clarity of images you get through the whole f-stop range. but also just how it looks and how it feels. It's really, really good. So yeah, top marks for the Aperture, really happy. And the price point matching what it is, I think is really good as well. Yeah. Okay, the next point I'm going to talk about is filming with the 500mm, which has been beautiful. It is so clear and so easy to film with. And actually, if you wanted to try handheld, I think it would be fine because of that balance that I've mentioned. It's really easy to shoot with. But because the GFX100S2 does not allow slow speed or like high speed filming, which is like maximum at 4K at 30 frames, I shot everything in 24p. You can't do anything at like your normal 120p like I would on my X series. Like I had to use a tripod. I couldn't do anything handheld because it was just like, I just shake so much. So just bear that in mind. All the footage I'm going to show you was in 4K, 24p, H.265, 10-bit and in F-Log because that's what I like to shoot with. But I'll show you what I mean. You can achieve some beautiful footage and it's clear, really, really clear, like beautiful footage, but just nothing slow motion. So I would like to try this lens on the GF100 II. I don't know what it is yet, I haven't used it, but apparently that has high speed filming at 120p. So I'd love to try this lens in slow motion because I think it would be outstanding. But what I got with it, I'm really happy with. Tones, colors, saturation, the same as the image quality. It picks up everything wonderfully, and that crisp, sharp, detailed image is beautiful. And also the autofocus in filming was spot on. Like I was doing pictures of loads of different things, or filmings of loads of different things, of gulls moving in water between lots of different other birds, and it still held on to the subject I was wanting. You could do tracking. It was wonderful. So you've got all these lovely options as well when you're doing your filming. It is perfect. So can't knock the filming, just wish I could try it more with slow motion work, but have a look and see what you think anyway. I hope you enjoy it. I really enjoyed doing the filming with this lens. I think it's wonderful. So yeah, enjoy. Okay, so the next point I'm going to touch upon is the focusing and the shooting modes, because you've got a lot of different options that kind of merge together with the 500mm in this realm of focusing and shooting modes. So when I first picked up the GFX100S II, I found it really tricky to get myself used to the different kind of setup and focusing modes and all this jazz, because it's a new camera. I'm used to the X series. I've never shot with the GFX series before this now, and it was hard. Yeah, it was hard. It took me time just to adjust. I mean, luckily with the Fujifilm interface, it's all the same, so that element of it was the same, but it's just more of the actual hands-on aspect was quite tricky. So I just had time to get used to it. And once I familiarized myself to all the settings and adjusted it all to my style, it worked smoothly like butter. It was wonderful. And actually the autofocus settings, the custom focus settings, all of these elements on the GFX with the 500mm was fantastic. So obviously you've got your options of your AI tracking, you've got your mammal tracking, birds, trains, cars, planes, all this stuff. And you've also got your auto custom focus settings, which again, you have to make sure you adjust this to every scene you're in, because people do forget this. They just want to switch to autofocus and hope it tracks what you've got there, but you still have to tweak it, and that's really important. So I tweaked it to every situation I was in, And again, it worked fantastic, both for photography and filming. You have the tracking options, which I use so much for the filming of the bears, and it would track a bear like walking behind a tree and stay locked onto it. So it was fantastic. I really enjoyed the autofocus on the GFX series, and actually I don't think it missed focus. The only time it probably did like skip sometimes was when I was photographing a gull flapping in water, and maybe it would get the bird's wing, because this goes back to the burst mode, which I'll come on to. The time you've taken the picture, and if something's moving very fast and it's taken the picture of where it was, but then when it's moved, that's the differentiation. So it's not necessarily autofocus miss, but rather that speed of shooting, which I'll explain in just a second. The only time I noticed it struggled with the autofocus was when I was trying to take a picture of a kite in front of a forest. So the kite was flying past the forest was behind it in the background, but it was dark, it was like a shadowed forest. And I think having that kind of contrast, and also they were like the same color, this red kite, and then obviously the reddy wood of the forest, that's when it struggled a little bit. It was like, and it's like, don't know what you're looking at. So that's probably the only time it struggled, but that was literally about it. Apart from that, it did fantastic. Okay, so the shooting modes. So on the GFX100S2, the maximum frames per second you can shoot in on your mechanical shutter is 7 frames per second. And on your electrical shutter, you can do 5 frames per second, or you could do a normal 2 frames in whatever. And there are other shutter modes as well, like your curtains and combination of the mechanical and electronic. But 7 and 5 is your key high-speed burst modes. And this is what I'm saying, if you are doing high-speed photography, or you need something that's like really, really fast, it isn't going to achieve that on the GFX100S2, which isn't a problem. As you can see from my examples, I still got all the photos that I wanted. And at first, it took me time to adjust to this slower formation. But once I actually got shooting, I realized like you don't need to necessarily be that fast. And these files as well provided by the GFX100S2 are 200 megabytes each. So if I was shooting at 20 frames a second at 200 megabytes each, you can imagine like the chaos that's going to create. And also the buffer to keep up with that would be crazy, because the buffer itself at 7 frames was still a little bit slower. Not slow, but it just took time to catch up. So I think that is the aspect of why you can't shoot in high speed on the GFX100S2. But with the 500mm, like I said, sometimes this could cause maybe that gap between a movement of a subject or something like that, which I noticed with like the gulls in the water. But again, I still got sharp shots of them. So it's not like I'm missing a shot. It's not like I'm not capturing the shot. It's just if you're shooting something where it's high speed, like Formula One, sport, or things that are very rapid, very fast, then maybe in that moment you might need something with a higher speed burst mode. But in terms of actually this camera and the lens working together, I got everything that I needed to get, and it worked fantastically. If that's a word, I think it is. So yes, this lens did keep up with the speed of the autofocus, or the subject and the autofocus, and also the burst mode matched that wonderfully, and it worked fine. And I'm actually very grateful for it not having the 20 frames per second burst mode, because actually when I drew everything back into my laptop and offloaded all the pictures I got, I knew in my head that I was very mindful when I was doing my photography, because I didn't want to be going through like gigabytes and gigabytes worth of images, because effectively 4 images is 1 gigabyte. So just bear that in mind. So I was quite happy with the more mindful approach with this setup, and I hope it can show you what you can achieve. It's not that you can't do the autofocus, it's not that you can't get shots on the burst mode. I think you just have to readjust your thinking, which I did, and I got a lot of shots of animals in movement. Okay, just to summarize my experience with the 500mm, it has been wonderful, and I cannot thank Fujifilm enough for letting me borrow this. I have borrowed it, I don't own it. They've not given me anything to do this review. I just borrow it, send it back. That's all it is. And I'm just really grateful for them for trusting me with it and testing it out, because for someone who can't afford this lens that sits at £3,500 attached to the £5,000 camera body, I can't afford that, I'll be honest. You know, I work full time, I do something completely different. So for me to be given this lens to test out is just wonderful. It's like I can get my hands on something that would be normally unobtainable for me. So all of this review is just from the heart and my experience, and from the perspective of someone that can't afford these things, but really just wants to show you what it's capable of and just enjoys that experience. That's what this is all about. And I have loved every second with this lens attached to the camera body. I think they've both been so good, and it's been so nice to try the medium format system, as I've always been used to the XF system for many years now. And yeah, I loved how the 500mm performed in so many different realms. I didn't mind having it in my hand, walking around with it for ages, taking pictures of like landscape, of the trees, of my dog, of the bears, of gulls, of the sea, just loads of different stuff. I was like, oh, that'd be really nice to use it for. So it is so versatile and so adaptable, which I've loved. I've really loved that. And I hope that shows in all of my shots and what I've got for you and all the examples. I've really tried my best to provide you with as much as I can with the time that I've had it for. So I hope you've enjoyed it and can see what you can do with it. The lens itself is beautiful. The images it provides are sharp and clear, crisp and stunning. And that's what you want from your telephoto lens. And you can trust that not just for subjects close to you, but things that are like hundreds of meters away. It still does really well, and you've got that refinement. But I just feel like I've only scratched the surface. These midges scratched the surface with this lens. There's so much more I could do with it. And I feel like I've only just tried it in such a small area. I feel like if you want to do like sport photography, like vehicles, people, Formula One, I don't know, all these different things, it'd be so nice to try it out with different stuff. Obviously that's not my area of work. I'm quite the natural photographer or nature photographer outside. So I've not tested it with some of these areas, but I feel like you could do so much with it, and there's so much more I could do with it. But yeah, I've not got it now, but I feel like I've only scratched the surface, and even just with that, it's performed wonderfully. So I think you can achieve a lot with this lens. As I've mentioned already, I've not tried this with super high speed stuff, like fast-paced birds, like really fast, because obviously you've got that limitation with the burst mode being 7 frames maximum. And yeah, I've not tested it with super fast things. I went to Skomer Island in the hope that I can get some puffins in flight. I failed miserably because I went when it was too late, but I really tried. I got some gulls doing some movement and stuff, so it gives you a rough idea what you can do. But that would be my next thing, to test it with small birds and fast-paced moving creatures of some sort. Eric, bless him, is not as fast as a puffin. So that's my dog. So yeah, that's my area I'd like to work on maybe down in the future, and I can provide you with another vlog of fast-paced stuff in the future. But just bear that in mind, that is the limited area which I've not touched upon too much right now. But on that note, I hope you've enjoyed this review. I hope you've enjoyed the footage I've got with this lens, which I'm sometimes really happy with, so much so, as I've said, I've got pictures printed out. Keep an eye out in the future because I will have the GFX100s 2 review out. It's just a bit of a meatier review, so I've had to kind of build upon it on all these other reviews first before I bring that one out, but it will be coming out soon in the future. And yeah, if you have this lens, let me know your thoughts and how you're getting on with it. If you would like to know more about this lens, if I've missed anything off, or you have any questions, drop them below and I will happily answer them. I always like to hear from you lovely people, and I always do my best to reply. I'm sorry if I don't always get back to everyone. It's just myself managing this all, and sometimes I just don't have time to catch up with everything, but I will do my best, I promise. And I really appreciate everything everyone says, so thank you. But on that note, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, stay you, stay awesome, stay wild with the midgies. And until next time, you beautiful people, goodbye for now. Bye-bye. I think we're good. My eyebrows aren't wonky. I don't have chocolate on my face or snot on my nose. I don't want anyone around for this next bit because I'm going to be silly. It just look a little bit like a thumb because my hair is very windswept today. Hello and welcome back to the wild. My name is Victoria Wild and this is the wild. I'm just moving because I'm getting bitten so much by the midgies. Eric's just behind me. Just there, you can see his little head. Oh, get off me. I don't know what that noise was. Eric, come here for a second. Come here, come. Ugh, in my eye. Is that my eye? Look at Eric's haircut. Look at the body. Are you okay? You happy? You look happy. He just melts. Oh, so much melting. I think that was everything. So violent. I've got to move. Nope. get my own sign off. Goodbye for now. Bye-bye. Quick run, midgies.